Okay.
Right when you are.
Good. All right. Here we are, another week back at it. Ticket to Gamehendge, the podcast that discusses Phish and how to get your friends and family into Phish. And oddly enough, we never talk about Gamehendge. One day, I'm sure we will. I think for anybody that listens, it's hopefully an obvious, Gamehendge is the realm of the fandom and the Fishdom
It's
and all of
metaphorical.
that stuff, right? Yeah, it's a metaphor. Come on, it's. I remember back in high school when Mr. Minwalla taught me about what a metaphor was. Remember Mr. Minwalla, Jammer?
Do I remember Mr. Minwalla?
Yeah.
Do I remember the age when teachers used to be able to say things to students and not lose their jobs over them? You bet. I remember the golden age of teaching.
Yeah. That's I don't even know where to begin. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk
Different
about.
podcast for that.
Few things on the menu today, of course. I guess at first, let's talk a little bit about Frank Zappa. We were talking about the Zappa documentary last week, and we're talking a little bit about my limited experience with Zappa and what we knew, what I knew, and so I guess I have some follow-up thoughts. So I watched it that same day, right? I got home last Tuesday night, watched it really, really late. I fell asleep with about 45 minutes left at like 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Which is sort of a recent record for me. But really, really interesting. Like I said, I didn't really know much about his personality going in, but total visionary that wasn't willing to compromise any of his vision for anybody.
Not one note.
At all.
Not one note.
Right? And that's, and as a guy who I'm very much wired to please other people, that's just in my DNA and how I am. I'm all about harmony, and I used to really avoid conflict with people. It's something that I've improved on, but I really, in a strange way, although it made me uncomfortable at times to see the conflict that he could create, it also made me very envious of that ability that some people have, just to be able to separate it and just truly not give a flying fuck about what somebody else's opinion is. It felt the most liberating to watch that type of an attitude,
So can I disagree and provide you with some examples?
Sure, always.
So, and again, this is just me and you having a conversation, but the stuff that you told me about with recent events with your family.
Yeah.
I would argue that's you had a very clear vision on what you were, and you were okay with creating a whole bunch of conflict. Number two, I guarantee you that if your actual values were threatened, like somebody threatened your family or something was going to happen to your children, you would have no trouble starting a conflict. You're a people pleaser in realms that don't matter to you as much as music mattered to Frank Zappa. And music mattered to Frank Zappa above everybody in his family, his wife, his children. The values that we have are different for people like him and are different for people like Trey because of the choices that they make. So somebody is threatening something that is like the pinnacle of your life, you will fight tooth and nail for it.
That's interesting. I think that's a really, really good point. Very insightful. And I definitely agree with it. I will say when it comes to, I guess, those conflicts that I faced recently, I don't think I could have done that 5 years ago. Right. So there's 100%. Definitely something to that. And obviously we're all on an evolutionary journey. We keep on, changing as people. And ideally we learn and we grow and we admit mistakes and all that fun stuff. But, so maybe I can get there depending on the subject matter, and I guess it's a good point. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about Steve Jobs. I read a couple of Steve Jobs not autobiographies, he never wrote his own, but the Walter Isaac's book and a couple of others. And it was very true about him as well. He put his work, his passion, that company above everything else. And wasn't willing to sacrifice or wasn't.
I don't think you can. You need to be a dickhead about it to get what you want.
I think Trey's proving that to be true for sure.
Well, I think, at the end of the day, like he's the one that picks the musician. He's the one that gets to pick what stays. But Trey likes it. We talked about this last week. Trey likes it when people add their own thoughts. He understands that it's a living, breathing piece of art.
Yeah, and that was brought up in the documentary that, once he puts it out there, it's out there for the world to take as their own, and he's okay with letting it go.
That part seemed contradictory because I listened very intently to those parts. The parts that I found the most fascinating were those parts, where they were talking about his vision, the way that he viewed things, And it's just, it's interesting. And I was almost contradictory of like, okay, so I created this and then it's out there and then you can do what you want with it.
Right.
Like that's
So to be clear, we're talking about Trey and What Calls You Home, not Frank Zappa.
No, I'm talking about Frank Zappa.
You are. Sorry.
I'm commenting now because that's part seemed contradictory.
Yeah.
It's still live and there's bootlegs of it, and it's interesting how he handled that and how he was so tight on his composition and the direct expression of the notes being played by the musicians.
Yeah, I found it. I also found it really interesting to hear from the original Mothers of Invention, the original group, and that were with them for those 4 or 5 years, and enjoyed hearing about how hard they worked at it, how dedicated they were. That venue in New York that they played 6 nights of the week, and most of the time they had the same crowd showing up, the same 300 people 6 nights of the week, but it gave them that platform. But a dedication to the art. But it was definitely tough to see them talk about how hard it was to work with Frank as a person, because I've worked with people that are tough to be around, yet you're still committed to do the job. You got to feed your family, all of that stuff. And I definitely empathize with them, choosing to be a musician and being able to perform on that level, but also at times just dealing with such a prickly type of a person.
It's interesting, right? Because it seemed like, at least when I was reading about Steve Jobs, it seemed like people were grateful to be around Steve Jobs in retrospect, right? Like in retrospect, they were like, he drove the best work out of me. I didn't get that from the, other than that one lady who broke down at the end. I didn't get that from anybody that was around Frank Zappa. Anybody.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to think, right? They always give him credit for his ability and vision, but there was always the but, and then into how they felt about him. So
it might have been just the amount of like cynicism and sarcasm that he has spewed. Like even Steve Jobs, when you watch the interviews with him, he seemed like a hopeful human being for the future. Like, don't fuck with my shit, but I'm hopeful for a better future, right? Where I just didn't get that from Frank at all. And again, of course, like we're watching, here's the part that's interesting too, is we're watching a documentary that's curated by the person filming the documentary and the people who own the estate of Frank Zappa, who don't want us to see everything.
Of course. Yeah, I think that's 100%.
Like, just so we're clear,
totally valid to point out. You always have to look at the bias and who owns the information, who's putting it out there, and it's something that we could all be better with all the information that we see. And I think it's a really, really good point to put out there.
Just so we're clear, I one of the benefits of having studied marketing for so long, one of the best ads, old school print and copy, is the advertorial. So for like a drug, it'll go like this: science on the breakthrough for new sex drug. Apply for your free trial. Right? So they make you think that you're entering into an experiment. It's an ad purposely designed by the pharmaceutical company to get you to take this drug for free and then pay for it later.
Right? Typical drug dealer mentality. First taste is free.
When 60 Minutes first came out, right? So the guy's name is, and he worked on MASH. His last name is Alda. I don't remember the first name.
Alan Alda.
Alan Alda. Thank you. He's the one that got created for 60 Minutes. And they're like, well, what's the secret to 60 Minutes is fame? This is his line. I'm feeding the public hot dogs. They think that it's broccoli.
Right.
He's selling a smart show that's really trash propaganda disguised to be intelligent.
Interesting.
Right, so you get people watching these documentaries on Netflix. Oh, I watched a Netflix documentary. Well, that doesn't mean, number one, that it's factual. Number two, that it's well-sourced or that it's even true. But it was presented in a way, right, that you thought it was like something amazing. Like, this is the way to go. So you got to be weary, man. You have to be weary of all that stuff. It's done really, really well. It's done in a convincing fashion. But convincing fashion does not make it true.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's going to be a more and more difficult world to navigate the truth in. It's getting harder.
Censorship.
It really.
Fake news. Come on.
All of it. We're so wired to think faster, sooner now that nobody's got the time to actually do the research and find out If what they read satisfies them, they believe it to be true, and we
Confirmation
move
bias,
on.
man. And we're all like that.
Yeah,
It's part of
there's
being
actually a
human.
really good podcast that Megan listened to called "The Rabbit Hole" about how this guy got really down a rabbit hole of the type of information that he saw. He became a conspiracy theorist, and he got to a point where through Google and all the information everywhere that he looked, he couldn't find anything but that type of information.
Right.
He got into this rabbit hole so far from reality just by all the algorithms, doing what they do and curating his content for him, essentially. And that's I see it in the stuff I look at on Reddit. I'm like, wow, like they're putting this for me because they think that this is what I want to see, and it's I'm sure I'm being duped in some senses, and maybe in other ways I'm being a little bit more clear in my thinking. But yeah, it's definitely an ongoing battle for sure. Okay, moving on. Let's oh, I wanted to point out too, so at the end of last week's show, you recommended me to listen to 7:15:98. I think you had asked if I had listened to it yet, and I had said no, which clearly I had, because as soon as I started playing it, I was like, oh my God, I listened to this a week ago. And I had also listened to it earlier this year. So really, it was my third time listening to it. Definitely an all-timer. Great show. I mean,
I love the tweezer into California Love. It's so
California.
good, man.
Yeah, that song takes me back to a very specific time and place.
Me too.
It takes me back to, do you remember the little club on Southdale? No, not on Southdale, sorry, on Wellington Road. It's not there anymore. It was right near the keg called Hillbillies.
Oh, yeah. Hillbilly Jims, man.
Yeah, okay, Hillbilly Jims. Is that what it was?
Yeah, we just call it Hillbillies for short.
Yeah, I remember they had like an underage night one time. I was there when I was 18, and that was like a big popular song. So whenever I hear that song, I go back to that time. I was dating Megan Rose and everything else. Like it was high school. Crazy to think. So that is one thing that I do love about music. It takes me to a certain time.
I'm actually pissed. Looking back, we could have been listening to Phish and going to the goddamn shows instead of we were going to underagers.
100%. 100%. Yes, if I could get into a time machine, I would totally choose my summers differently and the concert that I went to. What was the very first concert that you went to? I forget if I've asked you that.
99, Toronto. I think it was 7/22/99.
And who was that? Sorry.
The first concert ever.
First ever concert.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Guns N' Roses.
Concert.
Guns N' Roses, man. Guns N' Roses, Cobb's Coliseum. Use Your Illusions tour.
Jeez Louise. So that's what, 91, 92, 93?
93, something
somewhere
like that.
in there? Yeah. I'm trying to think of what mine would be.
Game changer. Somebody hit Axl Rose with glow stick, and they walked off stage. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember when I got tickets the day of the show when Guns N' Roses was making the comeback with Buckethead? It was just out with my dad and our pharmacist.
That was fun, man.
Yeah, and we went day of, and that was all kinds of shenanigans. That was great. That was great. That was a good Saturday night. And Buckethead sounded awesome. I know he's no Slash, but
incredible, man.
What a character to watch. What was the thing you had shown me with Buckethead prior to that? Was it a Primus video that he was in that you and I watched at your place?
Probably. He played for.
You were aware of Buckethead.
He played with Primus, I think, for a bit.
What's he doing now?
I have no idea.
Maybe that's a good follow-up for next week. Where's
Buckethead?
Where's Buckethead now? I wonder what Buckethead even looks like. But yeah, great player, but his movement, he'd play like he was a robot, and with that bucket on his head, you couldn't see an expression. So just a simple head tilt was like a very Michael Myers kind of a vibe, right? Really cool.
It'd probably be super freeing, by the way. So that DJ Marshmello, I don't know what he looks like. It'd probably be freeing to be famous and to be able to go in the world and people not know who you are.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, I would think that the novelty of fame wears off relatively quick with most people once the privacy is really invaded or they can't do what they want to do. Sure. All right, Phishiest Phish song. So we talked a little bit about this last week, and in the comments we sort of put that we need to sort of get an idea of what that even means and what the criteria for the Phishiest Phish song is. So I had an idea yesterday. I was driving home and I was listening to a song that I think will ultimately be determined as the Phishiest Phish song through the following criteria, but I need help with it.
Okay.
What I'm thinking is I want to take what I think are, between the two of us, take the 25 Phishiest Phish songs.
25?
Okay?
Wow.
Well, yeah, I think it needs to be a fairly big number because the catalog is so big, and I think, hear me out.
Okay.
And I think in order for this to be successful, we're going to have to reach out to the community to try to get some people to help us with this so we have more samples of the same sort of rating. So what I would like to do is take these 25 or so songs, create, I think, anywhere from 4 to 6 or 7, depending on what we determine, categories that you'd rate each song.
Yeah.
So things like lyrical depth, the jammability of the song, compositional, those types of things.
Yeah.
And then through multiple people, basically every song gets a score from each person.
Yeah.
And then we average them all out and we essentially rank them 1 through 25. We give other people the opportunity to add 5 songs of their own if they feel that, there's something missing from the list that we created. And ultimately, the top 25 songs will get comprised with a score of the Phishiest, whatever we determine it to be.
Okay.
And then in subsequent podcasts, we talk about 3 or 4 at a time and we whittle it down to number 1. I think I already know what it's going to be based on categories, but what do you think about that?
I think that's great. I think because my mind always goes to how can we make that happen. I think you can set up a survey through SurveyMonkey for free, and it'll give people the option to both vote and to write, and it'll even tally the results for you.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think that's how we can do it. Now I'm interested in. I think more thought's going to have to go to like what the criteria are.
Right, and that's it. So I'm thinking about everything from making sure that anybody who's scoring it does it, with the intent of doing it somewhat seriously, not just putting 10s across the board because it's their favorite song. Actually looking at it somewhat objectively.
Right.
But yeah, really determining what makes the Phishiest songs. So, I think obviously jamming is one.
Yep.
I think, I don't know if the term is, I'm thinking about lyrics, and there are some songs that are great. I think like Run Like an Antelope, could be one of the Phishiest Phish songs, but when you look at it lyrically, doesn't really hit the mark on that one.
See, I disagree. Set the gear shift to the high gear of your soul. That's pretty Phish, man.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it needs to be like, it needs to be Tom Marshall-ish, right?
Okay.
Right? It needs to be Tom Marshall-ish. Like, it doesn't have to be this epic story. Otherwise, you would probably pick all the songs from Gamehendge, right? Like Divided Sky, The Wind Blows High. Pretty fishy, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what else do you need? Or boy, man, God, shit. Like, that's pretty fishy. But I think definitely,
sure.
I think the lyrics are important, especially because it's something that I love about Phish. I think the lyrics are fantastic. The ones that I really like, and it's a turnoff, right? You want it to be polarizing for people.
Okay. All right. So I have jamming, lyrics, composition. What else needs to go in there? Like I was thinking about that. I think there are certain songs that seem to focus more on one player than the other player. Does it need to be like all 4 guys get to shine kind of a song? Is that sort of any other ideas?
I think for most of the songs they shine, and I think you encompass. Again, this is off the top of my head. I might change. I'm just throwing it out there that I might change my mind. I think if you throw in jammability, I think that encompasses all of them, right? Because they all get to change the jam whenever they want.
Gotcha.
Like you don't need, we don't need Machine Gun Trey. Doesn't encompass Phishability, even though I personally like that.
Right.
I don't think we need Machine Gun Trey to have a song be, maximally fishy.
Right. Yeah. No. I would. Yeah. 100%. I think we've talked about that before. It's not about how many notes you can play and the speed you can play it in. It's great at times, but it's about voice. It's about melody. It's about structure. It's about all that stuff. Yeah. So it's something that I like to do. Like, I wonder if we could get a few people involved just to get some sort of an idea and try to determine what that would potentially look like. Might be open to interpretation a little bit too much, but that's what can make it fun. All right, so I will look into that. See if I can get a survey and put that out there.
I think the survey would have to start because there's there's some people who probably have insight on like what would make a song, what constitutes a song like as being fishy that we're missing. So I think you always have to start at the standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if
Mm-hmm.
you're breaking it down, I would start with, hey, here's what, just share the idea and be like, hey, here's what we have. What other things would you say? And then 90% of the responses are not going to make any sense or be stupid, and then 5% are going to be really thought out and really good. So I
Right.
take that.
Right. Okay. Cool. I will see what I can find out there, but yeah, I think I know what song is going to be number one based on. But that's the criteria that I've come up with. I'm open to something, and I'm kind of annoyed at myself because when I was driving home yesterday, I felt like I had more than 3 categories. I'm looking at it going,
So you got to
that's not that impressive.
Dude, my memory is like Swiss cheese, man. You got to write it down.
But I'm in the car. I really can't.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
I should do like audio notes or
Voice
something,
notes,
or
yeah.
figure out a way to do that. Little reminders, like Darnell used to call his own voicemail at home. I remember when our high school football coach would call me. He was our guidance counselor. He'd pull me out of class to go over plays and different things, and I'd be up in his office, and all of a sudden he'd get an idea. He'd call his home and leave a voicemail on his messaging machine so that he could remind himself. It's pretty funny. So, okay, I will try to work on determining what the fishiest Phish song is. Today I just happened to stumble upon an article about the 25-year anniversary of a show in Philadelphia at the Spectrum, 12/15/95. And as I got reading the article, it's a show that I'm unfamiliar with, I started to question, could that be the Phishiest Phish show? 25 years is kind of crazy. And of course, I put myself back into where was I in December of 1995, 10th grade. Yeah, waiting for my leather jacket to arrive.
Was that Jason Allison's New Year's party that year? Was that year?
Nope. No, 95. I don't know where we would have been. You would have been 11th grade. I would have been 10th. I don't know. I don't think we did anything major crazy. The following year, I had a New Year's party in 96. Jason's was in 97.
Probably wandering the streets like a bunch of tools.
Yeah, probably. We were good at that, though. So I'm trying to find the article, and it seems to have disappeared, but I will find it. A couple notes about the show, just to make it sort of the Phishiest Phish show. There were a couple of secret language references in it.
Yep.
So they did the Simpsons, dun, 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 which the person that wrote the article felt that it was most people's first Phish show, although it was sold out. It was the biggest show of the tour, 19,000 people.
Wow.
It's the first, and kind of why I asked you this question earlier. It was the venue of Trey's very first concert. You went to see Jethro Tull there, and he talks about that in the show. So I think, like, imagine, if you want to grow up to be an athlete or musician, you go to see your first baseball game at whatever field, and you become a baseball player, and you get to play on that field. It's got to be a pretty cool moment. So I thought that was really, really neat. Fishman does a cover of Elvis's "Suspicious Minds" in a lit up cape.
Amazing.
I mean, Wilson, right? So you get 19,000 people chanting Wilson. Chalk Dust opener. It just it just sounded like a really, really great show to be at, especially if it was your first time. And I was also thinking about the timing of that. They hadn't had a festival yet. It was the end of 95. Oh, audience chest move. There was that tour. Right. So all these really interesting fishy type of things happening. And after reading it, I honestly thought about this, and I wanted to ask you the question. Are those types of shows possible now? Like, will those types of things ever happen? Like, when you think of what the Phishiest Phish show is, are we ever going to see something like that?
Well, no, because they already stopped doing most of that stuff.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know.
Just grown up?
Maybe that's maybe that's why, because again, that was before my time, right? So maybe that's why some of the people who are really passionate about seeing Phish from the beginning, maybe part of it is, and again, if somebody, if this like resonates, or if I'm totally out to lunch, I'd love somebody to email me, but maybe that's why they're not crazy about the newer style. Maybe they miss all those things, maybe they miss that energy, and that anything could happen, like physically anything can happen, right?
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know. It's just, and I guess there's different elements of it now, right? Like if you're a young guy coming up and you're at a show, you're gonna have some things that are unique to you and part of that generation. But yeah, it's just it's tough to say. But it does sort of put them into a unique time, you know. And even earlier today or yesterday, they announced that the newest live Phish release is going to be 11/28/94.
94, yeah, from Montana, I think.
Yeah, Bozeman, right,
Bozeman.
right, Bozeman, Montana. Which I've never been there, probably never will go there. Sorry if you're from Bozeman, Montana.
Super awesome there, by the way.
What's
Montana,
that?
Big Sky State. It's probably beautiful.
Probably, but is there anything to do?
Yeah, see Phish.
There you go. Yeah, dude, that article about that show has disappeared. I had it queued up and everything, but it was from Glide magazine, I think is what it was.
Tell me about it, man. Like, you got to remember something that you read.
Well, no, just about how fishy was. It was great energy. Harry Hood, it just felt like a very fishy show.
Oh, so
you know, really quirky.
I think sorry to interrupt you. I think another interesting thing, you know, if we're talking about like standards and criteria, is what would make up the Phishiest show.
Mm-hmm. I think. Let me think here. I think you would need. Oh man.
The fewest amount of songs as possible in a set.
Right, or you know, or like the S show from 2010 or 2011, right? That's just a random thing, and that's something at 3.0 that is very like, okay, that's really neat. The Field of Mimes was going to be really, really neat at Curveball, but that never happened because of the water thing that happened there.
I think
Phishiest Phish show.
I think you'd have to factor in like multiple night runs at the same venue to make it a Phishiest Phish show. I think you'd have to factor in I actually think you'd have to factor in some Machine Gun Trey or like the way the players played that night. I think you'd have to factor in things like surprises, like surprise cover songs that got busted out, surprise jams from like Haley's Comet into like a 22-minute jam.
Yes.
You know, you'd have to factor all that stuff in, new songs, the excitement of the band, like shit that happened outside of the venue.
Yeah, all that would have to go into it. And yeah, I guess with 20,000 people at a show, everybody's got a unique take on how special it was to them and how fishy it was to them, depending on whatever.
That's why you try to get objective criteria, right? To say,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. But it is interesting that is all the thing. Like, and I'm sure there's more. If we were to sit or solicit other people's opinions, we could get a lot more about what goes into the Phishiest Phish show. You know, does there have to be some dancing with Mike and Trey? Does there have to be the trampoline? You know, those are the types of things that are super, super fishy. Like they're so good, man. They're so unique. Like I just love the fact that this type of thing even exists. And again, I am annoyed that we weren't going to see those shows back in high school and everything else. Well, invent the time machine, will you? Get on it so we can correct
buddy,
that.
If I could, I would. It's funny, people would always go back.
If I could, I would.
People, exactly. People are always like, oh, you know, I would just go back and give myself a good shake in like grade 9. I'd be like, listen, pal, things are going to be good. Here's what you're going to do.
Yeah. There's only
you're going to worry less about X, Y, and Z, you know?
Yeah.
You're not going to waste time watching TV and doing bullshit. You're going to do these things.
Right. You got it. Although one thing that I do like that I did like doing in terms of wasting time and watching TV were the Beacon Jams. Segue. That was a terrible segue. But yeah, that little 16-minute documentary just came out called "What Calls You Home" about the whole idea of the Beacon Jams and some behind-the-scenes interviews with Trey and some of the other players. And that was a nice little watch. Really kind of summed it up. I think if anybody hadn't been watching them, and maybe wasn't so close to the band, as more of a casual fan, a nice little recap of what it was all about. There was one thing that Trey said that really stuck with me and really resonated with me. Any guesses on what it is?
I can only go on what I really liked the most, and I love the part where he talked about John Fishman, man. I got like
exactly.
Oh,
chills.
Oh my god,
chills. Like when he said that, you know, when one of us goes. He said, I really hope it's me first because I can't imagine being around without, like, oh, my God. I was just like, geez. It, really, really kind of hit me hard about how appreciative he is and, you know, how it kind of got me thinking about how, I guess, serendipitous it is, or kismet, whatever you want to call it, that two guys like that had the opportunity to meet and to form that relationship. And then it got me thinking about not similar pairings, but in music, what if John Lennon and Paul McCartney never met? Jagger and Richards and those types of pairings. And to hear Trey just call out that, although he said it's no secret that the musical relationship he has with him is unlike anybody else. Yeah, I just felt really, really good to see that. And it got me thinking about, I was listening to, I'm just about to start the third set for 12/31/2009. So I'm just about done. 2009. But in 12/28, it's one of those rare occurrences where the band kind of didn't know what was happening and almost stopped playing because so they were at the end of Maki Supa Policeman, which I always love and don't hear frequently enough. They're in the jam, and Trey just started doing these on his guitar.
Yeah.
And Mike and Paige both stopped playing, which you don't really hear. They were in the middle of it, and they were like, wait, what's he doing? Where's he going? And Fishman was the only one that kind of went along with them. Because I'm sure unless it's part of the song, the drummer's going to keep playing no matter what, right? That's just what they're wired to do. And they stumbled for about 3-4 seconds and then got back into it. But the thing that was awesome was 2 minutes later, Trey was like, fuck it, and did it again. It was just, and they kind of got what he was doing. It never really came back around or turned into anything, but it just sort of reminded me that I had heard that last week, and then yesterday I had heard the quote about his relationship with Fishman, and I was like, fuck, that was like that night in 2009. They were the only two that stuck it out during that little 3-4 awkward seconds, because that's just, yeah. So really, really cool. And just seeing all the setup that goes into a show like that, right? Like we've said it before, anybody that's really good at something makes it look easy. And when you only see the players on the stage or the back of the stage, whatever you want to call it, you don't necessarily see all of the stuff that goes into making those events happen.
I as a musician, because I have a band and we're just getting started, and this is a new foray. I would have really appreciated, and I really liked the parts where they showed them at rehearsal. I think watching the best fucking jam band ever rehearse would be beneficial to people who are in music.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of too is the very beginning of Bittersweet Motel, when they're playing Birds of a Feather and they're introducing the players in the band with the still shots of their face. And every time I watch that, I feel like I get tricked into thinking, oh, I'm going to get to see a lot of the rehearsal. And that's pretty much all you see of that. The rest of the movie is on the road, at the gigs or whatever, and I would have loved to see.
But this this just goes to show you, for content, if they just turned on the camera at rehearsal, I would be glued to that. I would not be able to look away. Yeah, I'd be very interested. Even I'd want to see it all the ideas, all the different things that actually, no, I don't like that, which I don't know if you'd hear a lot of. Just all of that. I think it'd be really, really cool. And probably helpful for somebody that's in a band to get an idea of what a really polished band looks like. I think if we look in musical contribution, I had this conversation with I can't remember who, but it was about Miles Davis. Every musician right now, and since Miles Davis, has benefited from Miles Davis, whether they know it or not. Right. So the more that becomes known about Miles Davis, the more we can benefit, because he was that type of person. Phish is that type of band. Everybody. And maybe we don't know all the effects just yet, but I'm saying I wonder how much of it is hidden away behind closed doors that we won't ever get to see or hear for whatever reason, like rehearsal. You're the greatest jam band of all time. I'm pretty sure you've invented one or two, things or new takes that would really benefit musicians in general if they heard it or had access to it. Now, they don't owe that to us. I don't think they should do it just because, but nonetheless, I still believe that.
Yeah, and then obviously over time, as they get studied more and the passage of time and they go away and we pass on, who knows in terms of what their legacy is going to look like. And I think not only just musically, but in terms of from a business point of view of running a band and some of the decisions that they made and things that they've done that are really against the grain, but have served them really, really well.
One of
You know, if something,
one of the most harmful things perpetrated by our society when it comes to like the arts is that somehow the arts and business don't mix. It's just ridiculous.
right?
Ridiculous. You know, the business model is fantastic. You know, I mean, like look at you're one of the biggest grossing bands that has of all time that's never had a hit record or a number one single or even got played on the radio.
Right. Yeah.
Like so there's this like like going back to Zappa's, there's this machine over here that's churning out these artists and this formula, and then you get these guys over here that did none of that, depend on none of that, and are the wealthiest musicians like on the planet.
Yeah, yeah, and get to do whatever they want to do
and do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Well, and on that note, I don't have anything else.
I'm good, man. That sounds like a good time.
Cool beans. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure you subscribe. Visit tickettogamehenge.com. Smash the like button. Tell your grandparents we need to get more senior citizens listening.